Andy, this is going to be a good one. We're going to be talking about food.
This is going to be a good one. Why are we changing course?
That's true. Good point. Stick around, everyone.
I'm Anthony. Welcome to No Vacancy Live. That's my friend Glenn.
You're watching the #1 show in hospitality. Everybody, welcome to No Vacancy Live. I'm Glenn Hausman. That's Anthony Melchiori, and we're here with Chris Shimkus, who is the director of catering here at the incredible Boston Park Plaza Hotel. Before we get into all of that, Anthony, how are you doing today?
I am doing well, my friend.
Yeah?
How are you? I heard you went to an event last night.
I did. I went to an event called ILIA, the International Live Events Association, and I'm glad I got the right pronunciation of it before this, because I was pronouncing it ILIA. Oops. So ILIA. So that's great. It's all these live event professionals here in the Boston area where I am today, and I got to share my stories and stuff like that about how hospitality is changing, the state of the meeting business, and what folks can do to be able to capture that business going forward, as well as some of the specific struggles that Boston is having compared to some of the other markets that may not be in some of these old school urban centers.
So, I'm just still shocked that somebody invited you to a party.
I know. Well, listen, miracles will happen. That's for sure. So I did want to, this whole thing came together last minute. So for those of you trying to comment, I'm sorry, this is a pre-record show because I was up here and I really wanted to do some content on this hotel because it's such an old school classic property. And who better to talk about is combining the old school philosophy with the new way that people eat than having the director of catering over here. And that is your title, right?
Director of catering and events.
Yes. All right. Director of catering and events. So I think, Anthony, the best place to start this off is crab cakes, because usually I don't eat before going up on stage because I don't want a little rumbly in my tummy and all of that kind of stuff. But the food looked so good. And I got to tell you, it was probably the best crab cake I've ever had at a hotel industry event in my life. It was a real one, not one of those little quarter-sized.
Well, why don't you just say it's one of the best crab cakes you ever had? Because having the best crab cake at one of those events is not a high bar to cross. So
it is, and I will tell you, better than the crab cakes I make at home. And I've got a huge ego, so I think I'm a great cook.
Thank you.
So the reason why I bring up the crab cake is because I think it's really reflective of where we're going. Higher quality foods served in individual portions that give the participants in the event the ability to create their own path for their eating experience at that. So, Anthony, what do you think overall about how food has been changing at events that you've been going?
Well, I'm more really concerned about, Chris, like, what are you seeing? And I am seeing a higher level of food at events, but, we're invited to a lot of really high level events. So it's really, what is the, normal person that goes and rents a venue for a wedding or Sweet 16 or a bar mitzvah or a social event? What do they expect today? And what are you seeing change? And then the second part, how'd you get started in this crazy business? But let's start with the first part.
And also, I just want to say we're recording this interview in this incredible grand ballroom over here at the Boston Park Plaza. And on the other side is 3 times as much space with a massive stage. All right, please.
All right. So the first question, I think, was what are people expecting in the food trends nowadays? But as you mentioned last night with the ILIA event, obviously it's live events and these people go to a million events, probably a year. So what we try to do, we try to make a more personalized experience by doing the small plates. It was even before COVID. So instead of those old, large buffets with huge quantities, what we try to do is give a more restaurant presentation, kind of give it that little more elevated look that our culinary team can put their touches on it. So the nice thing about small plates is you have individual unique vessels, presentation, you eat with your eyes first, of course, right? So you see that. People get really interested in the different items, and it encourages people to not only try more things, and it's only a small portion. So it allows people to try multiple things at the same time.
Right now, as we're recording this, Anthony, we were recording this on the day after Fat Tuesday, Mardi Gras. So last night, Chris brought in the idea of incorporating some of the New Orleans styles and flavors, along with some traditional Boston. So we had hurricane drinks, we had these other things. But the reason why I bring that up is to create the context of it's not just individualized portions. It's each one is like a little artistic showpiece. Like the crab cake was in little tiny iron skillets, for example. You had shrimp and grits. So it was one large shrimp on a bed of grits and looked absolutely delicious. So there's a lot more that goes into it than just having individualized portions, right? It's creating an experience by plating each one as if you were in a regular hotel restaurant.
Yeah, correct. And that's the concept. I think people, when you're at a certain caliber of a hotel and the image that you want to portray and to get the repeat guest back, 8 hotels can probably do, a fillet. Everybody should be able to cook at the temperature and do the right thing. Anybody that knows how to do it in our industry. But
I was joking last night about how far we've come from the fillet with the 2 pieces of asparagus and that little mashed potato thing.
Exactly. Right? And this is like, again, it's just going to elevate the product. It allows us to play around, like you mentioned, the crab cake, and we obviously that you have to have a good crab cake in Boston. So high quality ingredients, we make it fresh, and then we did a little spin for Fat Tuesday. We did the Creole crab cake, just to give it a little touch. And when you can do the signature seasonal touches, things like that, people remember. And when people come back, year after year or season after season, it's always a little bit different. So
what I've always been amazed at, how many people did you see last night?
About 50.
Last night was a smaller event. It was about 50 to 60 people, I think it
was.
So
it's not as difficult to keep everything going out at the same time and warm. But why don't you tell people a little bit behind the curtain of when you have these big events of how you plate it all and how you keep it warm to get out to the table where it's kind of everybody's getting served relatively at the same time and it's still warm.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of the technology's come a long way. Of course, I started in the business about 28 years ago, I believe it was.
Hey, little point of trivia. It turns out our own very own Dr. Producer Suzanne and this guy worked with each other for a little bit. So that's cool.
I had a full head of hair back then. So that tells you how long ago that was. But no, seriously, as far as the quality of the product, we do a large party. Like last night was 50 or so. We did a large holiday party for 1,500. And Chef and I still did the small plate concept. So it's having the right vessels. We have the Rationale ovens, which you can pre-program, and it actually keeps the moisture in. So it's all about the timing. Rolling them, you can roll the whole racks into the oven. You have it all pre-plated. So all you're doing at the end is rolling it out, saucing, and then sending it out. So we did the large event for 1,500. It was all small plates, very similar to last night. Just on a larger scale. And it's just really breaking it down by equipment, by station, and all the pre-planning. So once you
but what most people don't know is that technology is so critical to a great event, especially if you're doing 5,000 people. I was in the kitchen at the Waldorf Astoria when they were plating some ridiculous amount. I mean, it was more than 5,000. And just to see everything come out hot and to see the machine behind the curtain was just incredible. And people don't even know that technology, the ovens you were talking about, even exist.
Right. I would love to have one in my kitchen at home. That would be much easier.
Yeah, Glenn has one. Maybe you can borrow his.
Yeah, I'll have to go over there.
I unfortunately have the knockoff brand Irrational, so it doesn't work as well. So I mean, Anthony, you're absolutely right. Trying to serve all these people at once is a big challenge, and breaking it down is interesting. But you also have to deal with so much more. Going back to, it used to be you had the filet or you had the piece of chicken with the little fancy French boning at the end, right?
Yep.
And that sort of thing. So you only had 2 choices. And if somebody
which was invented here, by the way.
Oh, was it?
Statler cut.
No way.
It was invented at this hotel.
Oh my God.
What was invented?
The Statler cut. It was when E.M. Statler opened this hotel. It was he had coined that phrase for the Statler chicken. Some people call it the airline breast, but Statler sounds more, you can charge more for it. So it's definitely a Statler.
That's kind of like when you see the little end of the bone exposed.
No, I understand. Yeah. What's the history? What's the biggest history about the hotel? What's like something we don't know about the hotel?
Yeah, well, I think it's very interesting, and it was built in 1927, E.M. Statler. And one thing that I would say is the first hotel that had it sounds funny, but vertical plumbing. So the way they set up the building that in those days,
right?
It had in-room radios for everybody. It also had the old valet doors. So you could leave your laundry inside the door, and then the valet would come up and take it and actually, return it to the guest without disturbing the guest. And we still actually have the same working mail chute that we had.
I saw that.
It's all the way up.
I didn't know if
it's
it
still
works.
Yep, they come and pick up the mail every day. So
that's really cool.
What's kind of cool about this is, I spent some time I'm from up here originally, but I spent some time in Florida. So it's nice to be back in Boston when you have that historic blend of, the history and the architecture and things like that.
Yeah, here, not even 100 years old, and that's historic. In Florida, everything is like 50.
Yeah, I loved it. It was huge space down there, but it was nice to come back.
Except St. Augustine, that place is
the biggest reason motels went to hotels is because of the elevator. People don't even think about that. People don't think about the electricity, and air conditioning and, elevators. We think the automatic key lock was the coolest thing.
Right.
But, back in the day when the Plaza and the Waldorf and all these great hotels opened up, they didn't have the basic amenities that you have today. And when they did get them, most people flocked to these hotels because they didn't even have them in their own house. So it was a really great event. And we don't realize, and I can go on and on and on. I just did a history show with Don Wildman about history of 3 hotels in New York City. And we don't realize the significance of hotels for a community. Like, you're a hotel for that community. Forget about what it does today. You have competition. But back in the day when it opened, you were it. I mean, you were the centerpiece of the town, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, it was the first of its kind, really, because it had 1,060 guest rooms, which was an enormous building. I believe it was the 3rd largest in the country at the time.
Wow.
So it was definitely, the history here. There was airlines had offices here. There was some of the local universities had offices here. I believe there was a medical center on the 15th floor as well at some point on one of the floors. So the history is pretty amazing, and that's one of the things that obviously drew me back here was being part of the history of the Boston Park Plaza.
Right. I walked into a hotel yesterday, and they were touring us around, and I walked into a meeting room, and it looked like a store. It looked like somebody's office. And it looked like they've been there for a while. And I asked the general manager, I said, what's that? And he goes, they rent it every month from us. And I go, what is that? He goes, that's your business. They run their business from the meeting room. And it's like, you don't realize how many hotels and how much hotels really help the community. So just fascinating. But where are you from 2019 to now on events? And where are you pacing for this year? Are you outpacing 2019? And what does it look like on the books?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we were lucky enough to recover pretty quickly once the restrictions got lifted and whatnot. So last year we finished, we had one of the busiest Novembers in history, not even just 19. So we had budgeted this year to do 19 levels, and we're already forecasting to exceed 2019 levels.
Wow.
Our inquiries, which is our sales team and my catering sales team, we've gotten more inquiries by at least 30 to 40% more than we did in 19. It's incredible to see the pent up demand of people that want to come back and do live events.
So anecdotally, we're hearing around the country a lot more shorter booking windows for events. So you're seeing that too. So what is that playing out like?
Well, it's funny because even this month that we're in now, in January and February, usually in Boston, you could, it's usually empty because of the winter. But we've had about 4 major groups that you would see mostly in May or September or October come through just in these first 2 months.
It's a good spin on global warming because it's not as bad anymore.
With the new San Diego. Yeah. Come visit us.
Anthony, you look like you're going to say something.
No, it's just fascinating. Is it mostly social or business? What's the mix of business?
Yeah, social stayed strong. That was obviously last year, I think, was a record year for most people with socials. If you look at weddings, and
I was about to say that events. You probably, because a lot was punted.
Yeah, absolutely. And then this year we've been seeing a lot more uptick in corporate, which is great. So a lot of pharma, medical, you name it. It's all the corporate events that haven't met for a couple of years that are getting all their people back, and it's a lot more. It's more incentive driven, more experience driven than in the past. I think people are just anxious and excited to get back to live events. Yeah. And I've seen a lot more social aspect to the conferences versus just dictating information. It's more networking and kind of the social aspect to it.
Did you want to say something, Glenn?
No, it's okay.
No, and one of the things that you may not understand, a lot of people may not understand, is the director of catering is really. You're playing quarterback and you're also playing defense and linebacker. You're playing all the positions because as a director of catering, it gets booked. Then you have to make sure that the room looks perfect. All the lights, all the light bulbs are where they need to be, that the paint is painted, that the food is cooked, that the front desk is taking care of your VIPs, that the rooms that people book. So the director of catering really is the person that's getting his ass kicked from all ends. And at the end of the day, they're the ones looking at the person in charge of the event the second they come on and the second they leave. So if things go wrong, he's the one or she's the one getting his ass kicked, correct?
Yes, that's definitely correct. But the good thing is it's at home too, so it doesn't. I'm used to it.
Well, that goes without saying. But it's true. People don't really appreciate how difficult your job is.
Yeah, and it's a lot of fun though too. It's a challenge. And that's the fun thing. You get to see it come from an idea to the fruition to the execution of it. And also, it can't be done obviously without a great culinary and banquet team and the rest of the operations team, which really makes us look good. So
yeah, when I was at the Plaza, I was always jealous of Director of Catering because his name was Mr. Harvey, who actually wrote a book about catering, and he was always in the middle of the coolest events, whether it be Eddie Murphy's wedding, the Home Alone 2, like every single thing that was going on at the hotel, he was the quarterback and he was the guy, and a lot of these events, like I was a front desk manager, and eventually got promoted to director of front office. But even us, like we were like prevented from getting behind the red rope because there's so many highfalutin people around. But the director of catering is right there holding the ball.
Oh yeah, I mean we even did one even right after the pandemic, and it was I'll just say it was a boy band, and it was an incentive with a radio station, and we did it in one of our unique spaces downstairs called Avenue 34, and I ended up being the only line of defense between a lot of 30 to 40-year-old women and this boy band. So
wow, Menudo's back. You had Menudo. No, you had Menudo?
No, he's obviously talking about New Kids on the Block or something.
No, does anybody remember Menudo? They were the first real boy band.
I remember in high school, all the girls had crushes on the Menudo boys who then got kicked out at like age 16 or something like that. So what I'm curious about is, Anthony, you started talking about putting all the different components together. And Chris, you were talking about how the meetings business is kind of changing. It's a lot more social. People are looking to do more networking. So what are meeting planners coming to you with that's new and different, or at least an acceleration to the trends that we were starting to see prior to the pandemic?
Yeah, I think some of the biggest things I've seen is obviously the technology's come a long way as well. So a lot of people are still having some component of streaming or some type of taping of their conference so they can reach a larger audience. But so that comes with its own intricate like timing and time zones and things like that. If it's live, if it's taped, it's still a little component because you have to be careful as you're taping something and whatnot. But really what I've seen is a lot more focus on opening receptions, special dinners, celebrations, but not just like you had mentioned earlier, not the same, plated that you see. They want that experience, a little taste of the area they're in. And there's a lot more interactive things, like, and everything's social media, everything's quick, right? So everybody wants to see like the 360 photo booth, so it gets loaded right on social media immediately. Because if it wasn't on social media, it didn't happen apparently.
Tell me about it. But I was having an epiphany the other day because me and Glenn, when we hang out, the one thing we don't do well is to do anything with social media. But I have to keep my social media going. But you can't sit down at a table without somebody taking 37,000 pictures. And when you really put it in perspective, does anybody really care if you're eating a steak? Like I had a really nice lunch yesterday. I didn't take a picture of my steak. And like,
here's my ramen from yesterday, just in case.
We should get some ramen now.
I know it doesn't look good, but it looks right.
Yeah, I'd take that
beautiful.
right now.
I know.
Well, I'm offended how abrasive you were with that. No, it's just like if you really put it down, like if you really think about it and break it down, it really is, unless it's really pushing your business forward, which obviously you need social media and I need to have social media and Glenn needs to have social media. But when you really think of the nuance of the things that people post, are so ridiculous. It's so like insane. But anyway, I can go off. I just had that conversation yesterday with somebody. It's just, I just hate being around people that all they're doing is social media and you spend 30 minutes watching them post.
But what it does is it kind of affects how you're approaching these events,
of course,
because it's so important for you to set the scenario for people to have those moments, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you have to be extra careful because I mean, obviously every day is an audition, but when it's on media, you no matter what it is, you're only as good as that last photo.
Well, that brings us back to where we started with the crab cake and stuff like that.
Exactly.
it's really visually attractive and something that will help extend your branding beyond utilizing other people's social media channels. So it's practical for the folks that are here, but it's also a great marketing and advertising technique as well.
Yes, absolutely. And that's one thing. If I always look at it, if you have a captive audience of 500, 1,000 attendees, you already have that business, but it's what's coming out of that. So you really want to show off what you can and do some points of difference and make yourself set apart.
Yeah, and that's really a good point. You know, a lot of people don't even think that way, especially in the Boston market where, you know, everybody knows everybody because it's a big, small town. And it's so important to really showcase, because we've all been to these events and very rarely are you stopped in your tracks with something that's done well. And when you are, you remember it.
Yes, absolutely. Just like service. I think same thing with service. I think it's when you receive great service, whatever industry it's in, it's almost a surprise nowadays, which years ago was a standard.
Right. And Anthony, I know Dr. Suzanne's going to bring up some pictures over here, which is really cool. She also says that this had the largest barber shop in the United States in the basement at one.
Yes,
time.
And they were actually. I got here 9 years ago. There was still a barber shop in the basement, and they left just before pandemic.
Oh. Wow. Look at these old photographs. And for those who are listening to the audio feed, I highly encourage you to check us out on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and you could watch the actual show or novacancynews.com as well. The radios in every room is pretty cool.
It was pretty cool for that back then, especially.
Yeah, for sure. Especially for the night.
Wow, look at that barbershop.
Yeah. Wow.
Right. And every president, they said stay there except two. And they just showed a picture of FDR. And his boss, which we all know was his wife. And it's just amazing how hotels become the centerpiece for events. I mean, in New York City, could you imagine anything going on with New York City if all the hotels closed? I mean, it would be impossible for anything to happen. You can't house any, you know, they're so important. And we really I always say restaurants are a want business and hotels are a need business. You know, you need a hotel, or you can't function as a city. And that your hotel was such a big part of the history of your town is amazing.
And it's funny because a lot of people I run into, especially the people that still live in the area, there's always a story. It's either they've, you know, one of the local restaurants, say, used to be on the bottom ring of the hotel, or they've been here for a prom or for a wedding or for whatever that special celebration was. It's really unique when you actually get to interact with guests that are still coming back, you know, family after family after generations. So
yeah, look how beautiful that is. And do the Yankees stay there when they come and beat up the Boston?
We're usually sold out. We're usually sold out for the
Yankees. I hear that the teams are best of friends, so that's okay. No rivalry,
mutual respect.
I will tell you, one of the Boston Red Sox. One of the Boston Red Sox players' daughter or sister plays on my daughter's volleyball team at our college. So I get to sit next to him after he was knocked out of the playoffs, and I got to sit next to him, and it was pretty cool. And I'll just say he's one of the most versatile players in the major leagues. He's a really cool guy. I actually when Boston won, I actually was excited.
It's a great sports town. I mean, just like New York. I mean, we all
I think spoiled it's a great sports town.
No, you're different level than Yankees. Like Yankees, like New York, we have it's just a different level. You go to Boston, I would never wear my Yankee shirt to a Boston Red Sox game.
Dude, I saw a guy in a New York Islanders shirt in the elevator this morning. I was a little uncomfortable. I didn't want to be around it.
When I go to Boston, I wear nothing that says New York. Nothing.
Yeah. Right.
You know what? I love Boston, but
attitudes that I still know.
Boston, they're tough, but they don't just talk. They'll take a swing at you. So I'm not wearing the New York jersey. But anyway, what a beautiful hotel. What a beautiful hotel.
So speaking of the hotel, Chris and I were talking last night before I went on to do the speaking engagement. And one of the interesting things that you said, and I'd love for you to share that with our audience, is people want to do events in hotels, but they don't want them to actually look like they're doing events in hotels now.
It's funny because it's actually a lot of our guests and a lot of our groups would say, you know, we're looking for a non-hotel venue. So, you know, that's because of all the, you know, the pop-ups around town and the restaurants and the different venues that open. So what we did, we had a renovation and we have great owners. So we were able to renovate an old restaurant and an old retail space. We created 2 new meeting spaces on the lower level, on the lobby level. And instead of creating what you're seeing in the background here with the chandeliers and the balconies, which is great, and it definitely has its place. Yeah. But we wanted to create some unique space, which kind of gives you more of a city loft feel. It's kind of LED lighting, all the smart lighting and the technologies and things like that. So definitely a more modern, sleek look. And when we did the grand opening, we kind of created it more like an Austin, Nashville vibe, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense.
So that's kind of what we tried to do, because I was surprised at how many calls they would call a hotel and then tell me that they're looking for a non-hotel venue. So I said, okay. And we talked to our owners, and we have that to kind of go back at people with.
Yeah, and it's interesting because nowadays, and I hate to say this generation, but they don't even realize like what's behind you, the beauty of that room. Like they don't know what that is, and when they see it, they're like, it reminds them of something that maybe they can't relate to. So that's interesting. Do we have any pictures of that space, Glenn or Suzanne?
Suzanne will have to bring them up. This all came together like last minute, so I don't have any of that.
I don't care, Glenn. If you're not prepared, don't do the show, okay?
You should stick to that mantra for yourself too.
Dude, I am the most prepared person you've ever met.
I think you don't understand the meaning of the word.
Listen, I can tell you everything about Chris's history. I did a deep dive of his history. That's how well prepared I am. Matter of fact, I know that he worked with Suzanne, our producer. That's how good I am. What is your background, Chris? What was your first job, and how the hell did you get into this crazy business?
Yeah, I actually went to, believe it or not, it was growing up, and we didn't really go on many vacations, and we were able to go on one, and we drove down to, I think what a lot of people do is go to Disney. So we drove down to Disney. It was one of my first experiences staying in hotels, and I thought it was the best thing in the world. I had never stayed in hotels. I felt like closest thing to Hollywood, and I was like, I want to do that.
Was it was like an old school motel?
No, it was like I think it was back in the day when the Sheratons were the thing. And so we stayed at some nice hotels on the way, and then down in Disney, and that I kind of love that feel of that lifestyle, I guess you'd call it. So I applied early at Johnson & Wales in Rhode Island. So I went to Johnson & Wales, and I think that it was my first job out of college. I had written a letter back in the day to the front office manager at Foxwoods as it was getting built. And I remember sending a letter and just letting her know that I was graduating Johnson & Wales and I would love the opportunity. So I started at the front desk at Foxwoods Resort Casino when it was just the Two Trees was just finished getting built.
That's a small inn that's over there. That's was built first, and then they built the major towers.
Yeah, and let just for perspective, when that was built and that opened, that was really one of the first big hotels out of Vegas, and that was a big friggin' deal.
Yes. Yeah, it was great. It was beautiful, and I had never seen anything like that, so it was definitely a great first experience. I started at the desk and then went to sales, believe it or not, as a coordinator, and then saw some events, and that's immediately I moved back to Boston for an opportunity so I could start getting into catering and events. So it's been about 27, 28 years now.
But I remember Eric Long asking me.
Eric Long was at the Waldorf, in case
he was the president of the Waldorf Astoria, and I remember him asking me to take over director of events for the Waldorf. And I was young in my career, and I had no experience in events. And he was like, "I want you to be the director of events," and I was like, what kind of hours will I be working? I can't believe I can't believe I asked that question. And he said what you just said, Glenn, all of them.
My friends used to take out a calculator back when I first started in the business, my non-business, non-hotel friends, and they would do my hourly pay.
Oh my God.
And I was like, well, I said I could do a paper route and get more.
You know what? This is what I say to people that are not hotel people that talk to us about our hours. This is what I say. It's very simple. It's just a very simple statement. Shut up.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's like talking to a brain surgeon. It's like, you can't you can't comprehend it. It's a lifestyle, and it is or it isn't. Like, you can't manage those hours. So I remember, because I was young and I had a family, and I don't like working weekends. I never liked working weekends. I was a general manager for many, many years, and I didn't work weekends. And I was just like, I can't work till 3:00 every morning and work weekends. I just can't do it. I will be miserable. And I knew, as much as I loved this business, I wasn't built that way. I can work from 7 a.m. to 7:00 at night, 8:00 at night, and leave on Friday night at 12:00 at night if I had to. But I need to wake up on Saturday and Sunday and have my weekends off. And I knew that about me, and I was able to cultivate my career. But I think if I was director of, and especially at the Waldorf, I mean, it would have been the coolest job in the history of jobs, because you meet every single person in the world.
Yeah. So I got a question for you. Why did you go down this track as opposed to any of the other tracks in hospitality?
Yeah, it's funny. I think it was the event side. I love the creativity. I love the flexibility on it. And I got to see so many different aspects of an event, and nothing against rooms, of course. I mean, that's the bread and butter of
just
any
what
hotel.
you love.
It's just, the detail and the excitement. And I think we create the emotion in the hotel where it's more, it's not as transactional. It's very personal, and you get to see that result. And then when the client comes in that day to see the room, or after the event, when you've done a successful event, it's that great feeling driving home. So there's something about that that drew me to the event side of things.
Okay, so tell me the biggest challenge you ever had an event where you either screwed something up and you had to fix it, or you didn't see something coming and it hit you like a ton of bricks.
Good question.
All right, let's see
if he has a fun time answering it.
Well, there's been, I mean, of course, 28 years of plenty
which
of those.
one are you going to remember?
Yeah, I'm trying to think which one. There was one, it wasn't at this hotel because we don't have outdoor space, but it was in an outdoor event. And we were doing it, it was basically right on the harbor in Boston.
This is in Florida. Oh, Boston.
Yeah, this is before I went to Florida. And it was one of those things where you don't think of all the intricate details of doing outside events sometimes.
Right.
And what happened was it happened to be no wind, and we didn't have the extra fans. So being by the water there, I'll never forget, there was all these little black gnats that were kind of around.
Oh God.
And so I got called over to the, to the client table, and they said, Chris, what's going on with all the, with all these gnats? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. What gnats? What are you talking about? I was kind of like, as I'm wiping them off my face, but and so that was like a moment where I was like, what am I doing? Why? Like, I should have had fans. I should have but I always tell everybody it's, there's never a perfect event, no matter what you do, because I always critique afterwards.
Of course.
If I ever do a perfect show or a perfect event, I'll probably retire at that point. But,
okay, so I think Bridezillas get a bad reputation because I don't think there are as many as people say. But give me your worst. Give me your worst. Your worst wedding story of where maybe the groom or the bride or the groom's mother or the bride's mother or father lost their minds.
Oh, geez, I haven't done
without getting too specific, and definitely it didn't happen at this hotel.
Yeah, I think. Well, no, I wouldn't ever use one at this hotel. But and actually, the team that does the weddings here, they do a fantastic job. So I'm lucky enough at this point in my career. I don't typically do the weddings, but there's a handful that I have done especially during COVID days and things like that. But I would say years ago, and it was, believe it or not, you would expect it to be a bride or potentially a groom or whatnot, but in this particular instance, and I can't say the brand hotel I was working at the time, but the father wanted to pay with a certain reward point, and he couldn't pay for the wedding with the certain reward point. I was explaining, it was for, guest rooms and things of that sort. And you would have thought I had just ruined his daughter's entire wedding. I mean, it was literally a raised voice in the lobby. And I said, sir, listen, we have a lot more we have to do this weekend. We can't start it off like this. But so that was probably one that stands out to me because I still remember this day, him just being very irate about not using these coupons or points or whatever.
That's crazy.
You know what? But he probably was nervous because he probably, it was probably a lot of money and he probably had a difficult time maybe paying for it.
Yeah, or maybe I upsold them the expensive one. I don't remember that.
So I gotta ask you, at what point are you brought in when people are coming and poking their nose around as to doing an event?
Yeah, usually I try to get there in the beginning. So if our sales team has a key site, I like to try to go down and with the salespeople, just to give an operational perspective and kind of do the site.
So you'll touch into the meeting as opposed to accompany the whole.
Yeah, and I think a lot of planners and especially event planners enjoy that because they know it'll be my team and I that execute on site. So we can, walk the space. And if they're asking, hey, can we fit 500 here? Like this style, I can jump in and say, well, we can do XYZ and provide options if we can and give them a more realistic approach to what we can do with it.
So Chris, one of the things we try to teach stand-ups and the importance of pre-meetings and stuff.
Yep, absolutely.
So when you have a big event, what does that meeting look like, that pre-meeting, and who attends that pre-meeting?
Sure. Well, just to start, we do a daily stand-up with all of our leaders, with all the operation teams as well. We do a daily banquet event order meeting to cover the next 2 days events. And we do a weekly food and beverage leadership meeting as well, just to kind of stay in touch with everybody. We also do a department head meeting. As much as meetings that I think they're necessary because it's a great way to get the information out to trickle down to the entire team, because everybody wants to feel like they are informed and want to know all of that. But specifically, if we have a key event, what we'll do is we'll call a separate meeting for that. Similar to what I think a lot of people would in the industry would call a resume meeting, but it's a separate one for that particular event. So you'd have all the key operating departments, the chefs, banquets, stewarding, front office, valet, sometimes FedEx, because they do our shipping and receiving. So it really depends on the content of the event, but we do get all the key players in a room and kind of run through it almost as if you would run through like a resume. And you ask the questions, and we challenge every department head or department leader to come with questions. So if somebody's just sitting there and I kind of know it, I'm like, hey, are you good with and then we'll call it out. It's because at that point, that's your only time to really run through it. As you guys know, it's live. You can't take it back. So it's one of those things where you really have to be as prepared as you can and take away as many potential moving parts as possible. So
I remember I was staying at someone's beautiful hotel. I won't tell you who or where. And they said, would you mind running our stand-up? We have a big weekend. It was one of the Labor Day Memorial. It was a huge weekend, and it was in a very warm place. And it was a place that everybody goes for the weekend. And they had all kinds of events going on. And they said, would you run the stand-up? It'd be, our pleasure to have you run it. I said, sure. I haven't run the stand-up in a long time. I'd love to. So I start running the stand-up. At the end of the stand-up, the general manager comes to me and says, what did you think? I said, oh, it's going to be great. You have a great team, whatever. I went over to my wife and I said, they are screwed. like I literally asked the director of front office, so what do you got? What's going on? Tell me what's going on. I'm good. I was like, do you have anything? You have anything? No, I'm good. There's no way you're good.
No VIP.
Like, you have the biggest weekend of your life, and you have 27 events going on, and you don't have one question for this team. You're done. So weeks later, I followed up. The general manager was no longer there, and the front office manager was no longer there.
Wow.
And you just saw in that meeting, I saw there was some kind of thing going on that I wasn't aware of, but I could tell in the stand-up the disconnection between the leadership and the operations. If you go to an event, if you come to my event or stand up and there's a big weekend, I ask the front office manager, what do you got? And they go, nothing. I'm not going to call them out and embarrass them.
Right.
But I guarantee you they'll be in my office the next second going, what do you mean you got nothing? If you got nothing, you don't have the job. Like what are you talking about? It's impossible to not have anything.
Could you give us an example of some things that they should be thinking about?
Okay.
The group?
All right. So what time, it was a wedding that weekend. What time is the bride and groom coming in? What kind of car are they coming in? Are they coming in with a limousine? Are they coming in? When are they leaving? Okay. What time are they coming in? What do they want in their room? Do we have a hook in that room for the wedding dress? What's the turn down service? Do they want to be disturbed? Where's the groom staying? Are they connecting rooms? Are all the connecting rooms pre-keyed? Where are we giving them the keys? Where's the mother and the father? Do they get along? Does everybody get along? Is this everybody kind of in, or do we have to keep people separate? Dude, that's just like 10% of the questions I would have as director of front office operations.
Wow. That's all.
Just knowing your business. That's all it is. Yeah.
Otherwise known as, I'm good.
But Chris, am I right?
No, 100%. And that's, you have to be engaged. You have to own your area and own your business. But I will tell you, I think I do a really good pre-meal and lineup, but hands down, our best lineup in this entire hotel is our housekeeping department. If you go up there in the morning, Allison, who runs our housekeeping with her managers, they get so fired up every morning. You go up there, you want to get in a good mood, you want to get motivated, go up to housekeeping lineup, and it's amazing job that they do.
You have to be so engaged. I had a reputation of being a complete lunatic. And just by those questions I just told you, that's just 10% of the questions I would have. And people would be like, oh my God, this guy's out of my mind. But at the end of the day, that housekeeper that's upstairs motivating her team, I guarantee you they're preventing 99% of the problems so he doesn't have to go chase his tail all day. So if those people aren't engaged and they're not doing a really good lineup, I mean, it just becomes problematic. That one thing, I'll give you a really quick example, and Chris can relate to this. This is the example I give to my teams when I take over hotels.
Yeah.
We don't want room changes. Well, why don't we want a room change? Because I want to know what kind of room they want, exactly the way they want it, and then we have to make sure it's perfect. Why? Not because we just want them to be happy, is because if they go in and they forget or they don't like the room, what happens? They come downstairs, they're irritated, we have to deal with them. Forget about that. We get them in the room, we put them in the room. Then what happens? They forget maybe their wedding ring, or they forget their wallet, or they forget something else, and now we can't find it, or they forget a piece of luggage, and now we can't find it. So now we're spending 18 hours tracking down something for a guest that's taking away energy from the party that we didn't have to deal with. And that's what people don't understand in running big hotels is those stand-ups it's like getting scrubbed down for surgery. If you don't get scrubbed down, somebody can get an infection and die.
Right. Wow, that's dramatic.
It's about getting everybody prepared how to engage with all of your guests, because even though you're a big hotel, you can't have, no guest wants to feel like they're part of a big hotel. But
it's kind of like it's a smart philosophy, because you're trying to prevent any possibilities of problems ahead of time by thinking it out and making the right planning. Right, Anthony?
Okay, well, you said something. You said that's dramatic. Let me give you an example. And I know you didn't mean it that way. But
yeah, I know.
Wait. You just paid for your child's wedding.
Right.
And the wedding, you spent 20 years putting in a wedding account for your kid.
Mm-hmm.
You have this big wedding that you typically don't have. You're kind of, punching above your weight. Right. And but this is your kid, and you're going to go balls to the wall on it. Yep. And all of a sudden it was a disaster. Okay. Because people didn't prepare properly.
Right.
This is something that's going to last in your family for generations.
Right.
They're going to remember the bad wedding. Yep. They're going to remember when, grandma fell down the stairs or whatever.
Right.
because they
I thought someone left a wallet in the room, and now we're talking dead grandma.
Grandma got run. He didn't control the reindeer, and grandma got run over by the reindeer. But no, it's really like if you do the details right, and as Chris and his team does, and his housekeeping does, as he said, it's so much fun. It's priceless. It's a Super Bowl. But if you do it wrong, it's Chris. It feels like you're in a ring with Tyson in his prime.
Well, it's also too, because I think I truly believe everybody wants to do a good job.
Of
so
course.
I always tell my team, it's up to us to set everybody up for success. So it starts with us, and then it ultimately ends with us as well. But you're right. If it's going well, you're on that high. It's fantastic. You're creating great memories. If it doesn't go so well, I think if you have a good relationship with the client, you can fix it quick and then move on from it. But you really need to only way to do that is be organized and have everybody kind of be engaged and be in it. But like you said, Anthony, you were saying about the weddings. I mean, that's a personal checkbook versus a corporate event, which is a line item. There's a big difference there. So it's a huge, huge stage when you get the privilege of doing somebody's wedding or somebody's anniversary or things like that. It's a big difference.
But even a corporate event, somebody could lose their job over a bad corporate event. Like Glenn puts on this corporate event for a big business, and all of a sudden it goes bad, and the president's pissed off for the company, and Glenn loses his job.
As a matter of fact, I have one story in that kind of vein. I was speaking at a corporate event, and it was a huge Indian crowd. So they had some Indian food, of course, which is typical in our hospitality industry.
My favorite.
And the hotel and the catering company, because a lot of times they bring in the Indian food, forgot the rice, right? And the hotel tried to make excuses for it as opposed to trying to solve the problem. And it became a huge issue because it affected everybody that was attending the event. And the president, who is known for having a little bit of a temper, was insane about the whole thing, and then wouldn't go back to the hotel ever again. And this is an event with thousands of people simply because of this one thing.
Right. And the rice in that community is like pasta in in my community.
Absolutely.
If we have a wedding and there's no pasta, we have a problem.
Yeah, exactly. So that was the issue over there for that. But Chris, as we're starting to get wrap up, what are you thinking about in the future? Where do you think meetings and events is going, and how could hoteliers be best prepared to surprise, delight, and exceed expectations in the future?
Yeah, I think for us, I think what we're looking ahead to is obviously you always try to see what a trend is or what's going to stick around and whatnot. But for me, I think it's more focused on especially the types of food. So things like plant-based and vegetarian options, dairy-free.
I did want to talk. I did want to talk to you about that. I was actually going down that path when I said we had the filet or the chicken, right? But now you have all of these other things to deal with. How much more complicated does that make your job?
To be honest, it's actually gives us a little more variety. So I think if you're prepared for it, I mean, you can the vegetables and plant-based and vegan and all of that. It's such a common thing for us now that it's every single show. And I explain to each guest, it might be for a meeting planner, it might seem like a lot to get like 27 or 30 requests for special meals, but we do it every time. And I think what I look at is if I'm writing the right menus, the key menus, and it makes it easier on operations, and we already have that addressed in our core menus, and then we can do some customized items. It keeps it fun and fresh, to be honest. And not only is it the allergies and the special requirements, just people are getting more educated on food in general, and some people prefer, for whatever reason, to go plant-based, and that's great. You can still make some fantastic plant-based entrees and dishes with a lot of interesting international flavors and things like that. But the other thing is beverage too, believe it or not. Beverage has come a long way, where not just alcoholic beverage, because that's always obviously been a key element, but non-alcoholic beverage, mocktails and nitro brew coffee, cold brew coffee. So we've purchased a couple things to do that on site for our guests.
That's pretty cool.
Wellness shots.
You're drinking a nitro cold brew right now.
I don't want to give them that unless they sponsor me. I'm not going to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I'm actually drinking a can of water.
Yeah, everything's sustainable.
And one of the things, Glenn, as Chris is speaking, you cannot do these events and you can't have this wonderful hotel. You get to play in this playground every day, Chris, unless the team members are exceptional. And every team has someone that's maybe mediocre. It happens. But in hotels like this, your main players and they have to be exceptional. And because these events, when you have exceptional teams, they become fun and easy. When you have people that don't really understand the critical nature of this business, just becomes really, really busy. You can walk into a hotel and, Glenn, walk me into any hotel and I can almost tell you what the general manager's wearing. Like you can just sense the team just by walking in the hotel. And, so Chris, I applaud, just the exceptional work and reputation you have and your hotel has and your team has.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, we appreciate that. It's a lot of work, but it's definitely a lot of fun at the same time.
Yeah. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Give the hotel a good shameless plug.
Great. Come to Boston Park Plaza for your next event. Give us a call. Check out our website. 70,000 square feet of space, 1,060 rooms. We are here whenever you need us.
Beautiful. And of course, be sure whenever you want to listen to us on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, SoundCloud, wherever you get your podcasts, we are there. And if you're listening to us right now, why not give us a look? See, you can find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and of course, all of our shows are housed on novacancynews.com. He's at Anthony Hotels. I'm at Traveling Glenn. And any final words before we get out of here, Anthony?
Yes, Chris, can you have Glenn run the next stand-up, please?
Yeah, so definitely have him run the next stand-up.
That'll be more like stand-up comedy than anything else. Of course, everyone's just laughing at me, not with me. All right, everybody, thanks for being here. And remember, you've got one life, so blaze on and
be kind to yourself.
See y'all later.
What's a BEO, Glenn?